I just found out the truth about my girlfriend and I am too scared to go to college anymore. I am a third-year college student. I have been dating this girl for almost a year now. I met her for the first time when I was working on a college essay in between lectures while I was sitting on a bench in the college yard. There were multiple benches with tables all around the yard intended for students to use. The college was right next to a small forest of sorts, so I liked the breath of nature I got from there, unlike the city air. The sun was setting when I was doing the assignment, but lamps were turned on at the time. There were enough lamps to light up the whole outdoor area. I was very absorbed in doing this assignment of mine that I did not even notice the girl who sat right next to me, staring at me for some reason. When I looked at her, she smiled at me. I smiled back to her. The first day we didn't really talk to each other. I was about to say something for her, but could not because of my shyness. So it was soon time for my lecture, so I left. After finishing the lecture at about 10 p.m, I was headed home. She was still sitting on the same bench. She did not have a phone, nor did she have a book or anything of the sort. She seemed to stare at random places. It seemed like she was observing everything that went around her. I did not pay much heed to her because I was in a hurry to get back home. On the next few days, I did not see her at the college. This felt strange because if we were attending the same college, we would have run into each other at least once in every few days. But we did not. I thought that it was because she had a different major. One day at sunset, as I was with my college friends, I saw her by herself on a bench. I wanted to go up to her and say hi to her, so I did it. It took a lot of courage because I had little to no experience with talking to girls. But to my surprise, we hit it off really well, despite my shyness and inexperience with talking to girls. She told me that her name was Stella. We shared a few hobbies interests like writing, for example. I asked Stella what her major was. She told me that she was doing bachelor's in business. So this meant that we had no classes in common. Days passed by and I started developing feelings for her, and she did me. I didn't know that she liked me too at the time, so one day I decided to confess to her and did it. To my surprise, she confessed that she had feelings for me too. It was my first relationship. We went on coffee dates often and spent time with each other a lot. A few months passed that way and then things began to change. Of course, because I was such a lover boy, I did not notice it at first. I would get weird glances from my friends whenever they saw me with her. At some point I even thought that my friends were just making fun of me. Whenever I asked them what was so funny, they'd just brush it off. My friends were not the only ones who acted strange. My GF was acting that way as well. She was such a chatterbox before, but now she was acting like someone who could barely speak. I decided to confront this issue directly and ask her what was wrong. "Hey, what's up?" I asked her curiously. She did not answer me and stayed silent for a while. I wondered if she did not like something I did and itched for an answer. After some attempts, she finally answered. "It's nothing," was what she said, but I didn't believe her because there was obviously something going on with her. She started distancing herself a bit from me. It got worse to the point where we had this talk where she apologized to me and made up with me. I was so glad that we made up. I met up with her regularly on the bench pretty much every day. On some nights I don't see her on the benches. I see some sort of a black apparition that disappears as soon as I get close to it. It would slowly fade into the light. I would just write it off as me just seeing things. And then, one day as I was about to go up to Stella, one of my friends stopped me in my tracks. "Dude, why do you always talk to yourself there? That's weird," my friend asked. I got chills down my spine the moment he said that. And then I turned to look at Stella. She was staring at me, wide-eyed. Her eyes were too wide to be considered human eyes. It looked like bulging bug eyes. The minute I saw that, I turned around because I could not bear to look at the scary figure. I was absolutely speechless. So this was why my friends looked at me like I was a crazy person whenever I went to Stella. The whole time I was talking to myself, I felt both embarrassed and extremely scared. I could not focus in class because my mind was too busy thinking about Stella and what to do about the situation. After my classes ended, it was almost midnight. I stayed behind a bit to complete an assignment and soon finished it. As I started my way home, there she was on one of the college benches. There was Stella, but in her true form. She was covered in wounds while smiling broadly from ear to ear. She opened her mouth broadly as I approached closer to her, with her razor-sharp teeth in full view under the light. But I hesitated to go there because she was there. "Come here, you moron," she said with an angry, raspy voice. It sent chills down my spine. Without wasting any second, I quickly ran the opposite direction and went upstairs, since the only exit was past Stella. After I got upstairs, I looked at the bench to see if she was there still. She was gone. I turned around after that, and there she was, right in front of me with the creepiest smile imaginable. I was too shocked to even MKE a single muscle in my body. I absolutely froze up. She did not waste any time and grabbed my neck. She was capable of such power that I don't think that even 3 full-grown men can take her on. She then began thrashing me about, and then I was thrown near a fire extinguisher. I quickly took it and got her off guard by throwing it at her. While she was distracted, I ran away as fast as I possibly could and exited the college building. I did not even look back. I heard her raspy voice behind me, screaming and shouting. As soon as I got out of the college yard, however, for some reason the sound suddenly completely stopped. I went straight home and I couldn't sleep at all that night. I've shared this story with a friend of mine who used to study at this same college. I described the girl to him and he told me that I was lucky to have escaped her because most ended up disappearing. He told me that most of the guys who met her have disappeared and still never had been found. And upon further searching, I found out that she is a college-bound entity, so I am too afraid to go to college now and haven't went to college ever since. That is the only thing I can do to be safe. I visited a cult who kept their leader's body wrapped in Christmas lights and covered in glitter. I barely escaped with my life. The first time I saw Mother God, she lay in a blue sleeping bag, her face covered in glitter, her eyes missing. Someone had wrapped Christmas lights around her desiccated corpse, and now they strobed and twinkled merrily. "Mother God is in stasis," a calm voice said from behind me. I turned, seeing Hope had followed me into the room. She was one of Mother God's most fanatical followers. She is taking all the poisons from the universe into her body. Soon she will wake up and lead us towards ascension. "You must hug Mother God," a deep male voice demanded. Through the shadows of the hallway I saw Lama, a hulking mass of red hair and muscle. He held a pistol in one steady hand. "She will take away your doubts and anxieties." "I'm not hugging a goddamn corpse," I spat angrily, wondering how I kept getting into these bizarre situations. "How come you guys didn't call a doctor when she was dying? What the hell is wrong with you people?" "Mother God is not dead," Lama screamed in an insane voice. "How could God possibly die? And why would we call a 3-dimensional doctor anyway? Mother God is a 5-dimensional being. They wouldn't even know where to start," Hope said, her eyes wide and gleaming. Lama nodded in fanatical agreement. I wondered where the rest of them were. I looked around, trying to find a way out. I knew they had my 2-year-old son downstairs, playing with the other kids who lived at the compound. "If you don't hug Mother God, you will be recycled into the galactic center," Lama said, pointing the pistol in the middle of my forehead. He wore some strange combination of a shawl and a poncho, the once colorful material now dull and fraying. I could smell the sage and weed permeating his clothes. Lama looked at me with eyes the faded green color of swamp water. His long beard looked far greasier than the last time I had seen him, his skin sunken and gray. I turned, staring down at the mummified corpse. The papery flesh hung tightly to the grinning skull. The lips had been eaten away, showing yellowed, cracked teeth. The nose, too, had collapsed into the center of the face. 2 ragged sinus holes covered in dried yellowish pus and clotted blood marked the spot. The smell emanating from Mother God's desiccated body was sickening, a combination of cinnamon, feces, and rotting meat. "Do it," Lama demanded, shoving the barrel of the pistol into the small of my back. A sharp stabbing pain shot up my spine as I stumbled forward. "Do it," Hope repeated in her droning, emotionless voice. I looked down at the corpse sprawled across the floor. Inhaling deeply, I held my breath and lowered myself down on my knees. Mother God's grinning, half-decayed skull almost looked like it was trying not to laugh. I held my breath so as to avoid inhaling the rank odors rising from the decomposing body. Hesitantly, I leaned forward, extending my trembling hands towards Mother God. I wrapped my arms around the sleeping bag, hugging the corpse gently. I wanted to avoid releasing any more gas bubbles, as the entire room already smelled of infection and shit. Mother God's thin arms cracked like dry chicken bones. Black fluid dribbled from her mouth, reeking of sewage and bacteria. I closed my eyes, trying not to vomit. Isn't it beautiful? Hope asked as I pushed myself up, wavering on my feet and trying not to puke. She stroked her long brown hair over and over and over, as if trying to calm herself down. Can't you feel all the love radiating off of her? She is the center of everything, the storehouse of compassion. I nodded, continuously swallowing all the saliva flooding my mouth to try to keep from retching in front of these insane fanatics. The smell of feces and rot seemed to have grown stronger in the room. I remembered the children on the floor below us and felt a rising sense of horror as I realized they had been living in this house with a corpse for weeks. I need to go check on Davy, I whispered, feeling my heart racing. Everything seemed unreal, as if I were trapped in a nightmare. Lama stood like a statue, the pistol pointed down by his side. His eyes were half closed, as if he were in some sort of stupor. Hope crept up behind him, putting her long fingers on his shoulder. Lama's eyes flew open as if he had just woken up. Davy is fine, he said in a robotic monotone. Everything is fine, we are one. We are one, Hope repeated excitedly. All one. Okay, I whispered slowly, looking between the two of them. I'm going downstairs, then I took a step toward the door. A moment later I heard the floorboards creaking. I glanced back, seeing Hope and Lama following closely behind me, whispering to each other in low, conspiratorial voices. Even in the sprawling living room downstairs, the cloying smell of dead flesh followed us. I saw Davy sleeping on a beanbag next to a little girl, looking as peaceful as a tiny angel. Did you guys see Mother got another girl named Aurora? Asked. She was laying on the couch next to a smoking glass bong. She is still in stasis, Hope answered grimly, her eyes sad and downcast. She has not yet awoken to lead us into ascension. Aurora sat up, flicking a lighter and filling up the bong with thick, grey smoke. The skunky smell did nothing to cover up the reek of decaying meat, however. It seemed to combine with it into something even more nauseating and sickening than before. I had not come here for no reason, though I now regretted bringing Davy. My brother Lee had been missing for nearly a month. The last time I heard from him, he told me about making new friends in this laid-back compound where everyone ate mushrooms and talked about spirituality all the time. Then his phone shut off and he seemed to just disappear. I wasn't too worried, to be honest, as Lee was a full-grown man and could take care of himself, but after 5 weeks my mother and father begged me to try to find him and make sure he was okay. Now that I was here, I wasn't confident that he was. I wondered how to bring up the subject to these nutjobs. Hey, you guys aren't holding prisoners in the basement like some kind of Gary Heidnik horror house, are you? I'm sorry I'm being rude, Aurora said, turning her dark eyes to me. Like Hope, her face was caked in far too much makeup and had a somewhat blocky, unattractive quality. Her nose was just slightly too big, her forehead too high, her cheekbones too bony. Other than Aurora's hair, which was dyed pink and black, she might have been twins with Hope. She raised the bong to me. You said you're friends with Lee, right? Do you want a hit? I waved my hand in front of my chest. No, I'm good, I said. Actually, Lee's my brother. He dropped off the map a few weeks ago and my parents just wanted to make sure he wasn't dead in a ditch somewhere. I didn't realize it at that moment, but things were about to get a lot stranger than they already were in the compound. I heard a shrill keening rising in volume. It sounded like the cries of a panicked, injured animal. It drew closer. My head ratcheted over to stare at the basement door, which flew open. A naked woman with frayed strands of thick rope still tied to her wrists exploded through the threshold. She looked scarecrow thin, and her pale white flesh covered in deep purple bruises and angry red gashes. Help me, she cried, staring directly at me. The rest of the room went deathly silent. I heard the crying of Davy and the other children as they woke up, surprised by the sudden screaming and slamming. What are you doing out of the learning room, Lama? Asked in a voice seething with psychopathic coldness. She screamed and tried pushing past Lama and Hope, heading toward the door. Hope fell backwards, her eyes wide and surprised as she smacked her head hard on the dirty carpet. Lama was much faster, however. He reached for his holstered pistol. It came out in a black blur. He fired only once, hitting the woman in the center of the forehead. A small, perfectly round entrance wound appeared like magic. Her head jerked back, her hands clenching into fists. Her naked, battered body fell backwards as if in slow motion. She lay there, bleeding and twitching on the floor, her fingernails and lips turning blue. I heard a lighter flick and saw Aurora nonchalantly filling up the massive 4-foot-tall glass bong. Davy's small body stumbled across the room toward me, tears and snot streaming from his tiny, pinched face. I ran toward him, picking him up and hugging him. I felt the warmth radiating off of him as his arms closed around my neck. Turning, I decided I needed to leave immediately. I started heading toward the door without a word, but Lama stepped in front of it, his emerald eyes flashing with excitement and pleasure. "And just where the fuck do you think you're going?" he asked. A Cheshire cat grinned, splitting his bearded face. He ran his fingers through his fire-red hair, looking as calm and collected as a Buddha. "Don't you want to see your brother?" No, I think I'm good." I stuttered nervously. Lama put the hand with the pistol in it around my neck, leaning on me like an old friend. "He's here, you know," he whispered in a conspiratorial voice. "He wants to see you too." "We can't let you leave until you see Lee," Hope said from behind me. She had crept up on me and her voice was only inches away. I saw her holding a long, serrated knife covered with dark crimson stains by her side. The handle looked sticky with gore. "Why did you kill that girl?" I whispered, feeling Davy's rapid heartbeat beating through his shirt. I cradled my son in my arms protectively, but I was surrounded on all sides, the only exit blocked. Lama shook his head, looking like a disappointed parent. "She tried to escape and tell others about us," he said. "The world is not ready for us yet. Mother God has not awoken. We try to be compassionate here. If anyone tries to escape, they go to the learning room, where they can be taught anew." "She was worthless anyway," Hope spat with hatred, prodding the still corpse of the naked woman with one shoe, always complaining about how much she missed her family. "This is our family now, the intergalactic family of love." Her eyes shone with fanaticism. "Do you want to see the learning room?" Lama asked coldly. "Is Lee down there?" I said. Lama shrugged. "Why don't we go see for ourselves?" he asked in response, jamming the barrel of the pistol into my stomach. Davy's crying had quieted to a soft whimpering. Carrying my son in my hands, I turned and walked across the room towards the stairs to the basement. The steps looked dank and wet, flat slabs of concrete descending into a dark pit. Lama followed close behind me as our steps echoed off the grey walls. I was surprised at just how deep this building went. We went down at least a couple stories in the claustrophobic concrete tunnel. At the bottom I beheld a nightmarish scene. A single flickering incandescent bulb overhead cast the dungeon in a dim light. A naked man was tied in the center of the room, his arms held straight up above his bowed head with knots of thick, brown rope. Deep, infected slashes ran across his back, the wounds suppurating and spreading in black patches. His entire body appeared like a roadmap of torture marks, bruises, and clotted pus. All around the concrete walls of the room, someone had glued thousands of dismembered eyeballs. Most of them looked like they came from animals, but not all. Many were no more than rotting drippings of vitreous fluid and gore, yet others looked fresh. The smell of septic shock and decomposition hung thick and rank in the air, and I realized that not all the fetid odors in the house had come from the corpse of Mother God. From a dark corner, a silhouette stepped forward. I saw the form of my brother, his dark eyes blazing. He looked totally unharmed. He gave me a crooked half-smile. "Lee, holy shit. You're okay," said, surprised. He nodded patiently. "Father God is in charge of the learning room," Lama said. I looked between him and Lee, confused. Then the realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. "You're not being held prisoner here?" I asked, a rising sense of horror gripping my heart with a suffocating strength. Lama laughed at that, a sardonic low chuckle of mirth and sadism that echoed through the room. The torture victim stirred, raising his bloody head slowly. I saw one of his eyes had swollen shut. Blood dribbled from a purple lump the size of an orange. His other eye opened, looking watery and unfocused. "Help me," he whispered in a voice choked with pain. Lee stepped forward. In a flash, he struck out at the bound man, bringing a fist up into his jaw. I heard a crack of bone as a tooth flew out of his bloody, swollen mouth. "Stop it. What the hell are you doing?" I asked, still holding Davy in my arms. Davy hid his face into my chest, not looking at the torture and dismemberment surrounding us on all sides like a tomb. "He tried to sell us out to the men in black," Lee said, pointing an accusing finger at the naked man as he spat blood on the cold concrete floor. "We caught him talking to them." "What the hell are men in black?" I asked. Lee looked hard at me. We don't really know. They keep showing up here in flashy, colorful cars. They always wear sunglasses to cover their bulging eyes. Sometimes they have extra fingers and they're always long and twisted. They say they're from the US government, but they don't look like government agents to me. They wear garish ties and colorful hats that no CIA agent would be walking around in, Lee said grimly. Since Mother God went into stasis, I've been leading the group. Before she fell asleep, we were interconnected souls. We think the men in black are sent from the Illuminati, Lama said from behind me. The naked man just shook his head, fresh streams of scarlet dribbling down his chin. I never talked, the man whispered. Father God caught you red-handed, Lama screamed in fury. Lee looked like he would strike the man again, his dark eyes narrowing to slits. But at that moment, Hope ran down the cold, concrete steps, waving her hands with manic energy. They're back. They're at the front door and they want to see you, Hope cried, looking at Lee for guidance. Lee's face went pale, his eyes widening. The three of them ran upstairs, leaving me alone with the naked man in the room full of rotting eyeballs. Arm yourselves, I heard Lee scream overhead, the words echoing down the cold steps. I glanced back at the naked man who was hanging unconscious again, the weight of his body dragging painfully against his arms. The sound of shooting reverberated from upstairs in a deafening series of bangs. Someone started screaming in pain. They're coming in, I heard Lee yell, his voice tinged with a kind of fear I had never heard there before. I ran upstairs, taking the cement steps two at a time, eager to get out of the learning room and out of this house of such madness. I slammed through the door, sending it smacking against the wall with a clatter. The smell of blood and gun smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the omnipresent odor of death that permeated the house. Aurora was laying sprawled in front of the threshold, half of her face blown away and charred to a smoking heap of burnt flesh. It didn't look like the work of any bullet. A spreading puddle of blood wreathed her head like a halo. Lama lay in the corner, half of his chest blackened and exposed. His face was a mask of sweat. His clothes had melted to his skin. With wide, unbelieving eyes he gurgled, rasping and suffocating. The smell of cooked human flesh and burnt hair hung thick in the air. I thought I could see his heart beating through the blackened gore of his torso. The rest of the cultists lay dead or dying. I saw the children gathered together in a corner, hugging each other, their faces pale, their cries mixed with the gurgling of the dying. The front door stood wide open, letting the bright light stream in from the dirt parking lot. Silhouetted in the center of this effulgence stood the silhouette of a tall man in a suit. I felt like I couldn't focus on him, as if the lights grew brighter if I tried to look in that direction. He stopped into the room, causing his features to come into focus. It seemed the spell had broken as quickly as it had started. Two more men in black suits followed him a moment later. At first glance, they seemed normal enough from a distance anyways. And yet, my horror grew as I stared closely at the newcomers. Their faces looked as smooth and perfect as a glass pane. They each had a pair of expensive black sunglasses. All of the hair on their bodies appeared to be missing, even their eyebrows. They all wore brightly colored, garish ties and undershirts that didn't match their black suits at all. They had no lips. Instead, they looked like they had drawn a crude facsimile of them with blood-red lipstick. Their fingers were long and twisted, looking as if they had far too many joints, each tapered into points. I realized with increasing unease that they had no fingernails, no lines on their palms. Like their faces, their hands almost looked as if they were made of white marble, free from all lines and imperfections, gleaming with an inhuman smoothness. The man in the front removed his sunglasses. I saw his eyes were alien, monstrous things. They bulged from their sockets, the membranes looking as tight as a snare drum and ready to burst. Long, slitted black pupils ringed by irises, the sickly yellow of a suppurating wound, stared out at me. "Are you with these humans?" he hissed in a low voice that seemed to split and distort. "Are you a follower of the one they call Mother God?" "No, we're innocent," I pleaded. "I have no idea what's going on here." Davy wailed in my arms, his small face pinched with terror. The man in black put a long, gnarled finger on Davy's forehead. The boy instantly went silent, his eyes suddenly taking on a faraway, glazed look. "That is certainly fortuitous," their leader gurgled. "For Mother God was a thief, stealing our secrets. Thankfully, most humans will regard her as insane and rambling, but we can never be too careful, can we? Not with secrets." The sound of the last word dragged on until it exploded into a reptilian hissing. I realized all three of the men in black had their smooth marble white jaws hanging open. Serpentine tongues flicked out as they hissed in unison. I backpedaled away in terror, seeing the back door of the cabin standing open. The corpses of the cultists littered the floor all around me, puddles of blood spreading under their slowly cooling bodies. In the corner, a llama still twitched, his bloody face a mask of confusion and agony. "I'm not involved in this," I said to the leader, hugging my son tightly. "I didn't shoot at you guys when you came in. I just came here to check on someone, but he's dead now, so." "You are involved," the leader said. "You've seen too much." He had his small, toy-like ray gun by his side. It looked like it was made out of some gleaming silvery material that constantly shone with an inner light. "Put the child down in the corner with the others," he demanded. I just shook my head. "We will not harm the children. These are too young to speak or understand anyway." The two men in black behind the leader stepped forward, raising their small, toy-like guns at me. I trembled inwardly. The leader came forward, looking as if he would rip Davy right out of my arms, but at that moment, chaos broke out. I saw a blur of sudden movement from the corner. Llama's dying, glazed eyes glittered with an ineffable surge of joy and fanaticism. Crawling forward towards the men in black, I saw he had a pistol in one trembling hand. I tried not to look, staring into the leader's reptilian eyes instead. Okay, I said slowly, pretending to put Davy down. At that moment, a series of gunshots rang out, deafening in the enclosed room. The men in black all spun towards Llama, seeing his mutilated, bleeding form only 9 or 10 feet away. Llama's bullets hit the leader in the neck, causing a waterfall of blood to surge down the leader's garish clothing. But it wasn't any sort of blood I had ever seen before. It was as pale and white as the men in black's skin, filled with what looked like tiny pieces of opalescent glitter. The other two instantly responded by firing their alien pistols back at Llama, sending orbs of cyclonic fire ripping through the air with the smell of ozone and smoke. I took the opportunity to flee towards the back door. The sounds of the gunshots and the eerie keening of the fireballs followed me all the way to my car. Parked next to me was the car the men in black had come in, a garish, bright orange VW Bug with federal plates on it. I flung open the door to my car, quickly put Davy in the passenger seat and rummaged in the glove box for my knife. I heard it click open. The house had gone silent by now. Knowing I was out of time, I ran toward the VW Bug, stabbing at the two tires on the driver's side. I heard the hissing of air as they quickly started deflating. I hopped in my car, hearing the door slam open behind me. Two of the men in black ran out, shooting balls of fire at my car. I heard one ping loudly against the truck, sending the car fishtailing wildly. Davy screamed in terror, certainly traumatized by this horrid experience. After nearly crashing, I managed to right the car. Putting the accelerator down as far as it would go, I fled that place of nightmares, seeing balls of fire smashing the trees all around me as I went. I think my skin is falling off. I woke up yesterday feeling odd and itchy. My skin was so itchy I laid in bed for 30 min violently scratching until I bled. I rushed to the bathroom to look at my skin and I was almost bluish all over. I hopped in the shower and it provided some relief. I thought maybe I had a rash or something, but I was itchy everywhere. Maybe I had spread it while scratching, I don't know, but I hopped out of the shower and got dressed and went to the store to get some ointment. I got multiple different kinds of lotions and practically lathered myself in it. I started looking up my conditions and I figured it was dry skin or eczema or something. It also mentioned bug bites, which sort of makes sense because I have been spending a lot of time outside lately. Then I remembered the bug bite on my ankle. My girlfriend, who was away visiting family, and I have been picking random cemeteries around town and driving to them. The cemeteries are kind of just a direction for us to drive, and we try to find fun places along the way, thrift stores, dive bars, trails, and any other things that catch our eye. We made it to a new cemetery the other day in rural Kansas. This cemetery looked abandoned. Okay, maybe not the best way to describe it, but it was not well kept at all. The grass was overgrown, about as high as my waist in some places, and all the tombstones were dirty and weathered. We walked around looking at each grave, and they were all from the early to mid-1900s. We found one grave that was well kept, which I thought was sweet. While walking around, I got a painful bite on my ankle that made my knees buckle for a second. I figured it was a big-ass mosquito, but before I got a chance to look at it, an old man with long, greasy hair came running from the other side of the graveyard, yelling, "Get off the grass, you idiots." He spooked us, and we both just ran laughing. I had completely forgotten about the bite until now. I lifted my ankle to look at it and I saw 2 very bug bites with a bit of pus oozing out of them. Which I thought was weird because I only remember feeling the one bite, but since that bite hurt so bad I am starting to think this is the root of my itching. What kind of bug could do this? I looked it up and it said it could be an allergic reaction. It says it can be life-threatening, but you know how it is when you look up your symptoms. Hey Google, I have a headache. Oh, that is unfortunate. You do indeed have a brain tumor, so I kind of shook it off and hopefully it was mild. Besides, the only condition I had was the itching. I did not have red or swollen skin or a rash or anything, so I was hoping for the best. I stayed at home all day, moving as little as possible. It was almost bearable if I stayed completely still. I continued to scratch though, mostly gently but sometimes violently, making myself bleed a couple times. Even my face was itchy, especially near my mouth. I zoned out and scratched the same spot at the corner of my mouth, for I think an hour before I felt a sharp pain. I went to the mirror and the corner of my mouth was bleeding profusely, blood pouring out of my mouth. I tried to stop the bleeding, but the blood just soaked through the towel. I got in the shower again and the water burned my mouth, but I just let the blood drip into the tub. I stared at the shower floor for far too long as the steady stream of blood faded into the drain. I got out and went back to the mirror and was horrified. The corner of my mouth was ripped open into my cheek. I scratched so hard that I gashed my mouth open. I was disturbed, I was hurting, I was itchy and was truly losing my mind at this point. I was in so much pain I knew I needed to go to the hospital, but I didn't have the energy or the insurance to do so. I told myself to sleep and that I would go tomorrow. I took some of my girlfriend's sleeping meds and collapsed into bed. I think I fell asleep almost immediately. I was drained. Today I woke up, and I wish I hadn't. My skin was no longer itchy. I was beyond relieved. I laid there in absolute comfort, rubbing my skin gently. I put my hand to my mouth to see how my cut was doing, only to find no cut in my skin. I frantically felt all over my face, checking both sides of my mouth. I felt nothing. I sat up in my bed, and when I did, my foot touched something at the end of the bed. It almost felt like a grocery bag. I flipped over the blanket and saw a huge pile of something. It almost looked like the skin of an onion. I was confused, quickly trying to think of what it could be. I felt my heart racing as I slowly leaned closer and closer until my eyes widened and I lunged backwards, tumbling off the bed. I think it's a pile of skin. Human skin. My skin. I am scared and don't know what to do.